Hey, folks, welcome to the 4099 podcast. Well, today, after much debate and deliberation, is that a word, deliberation?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. We kind of wanted to let you guys know that this 4099 podcast will be basically used as an umbrella.
Yeah.
Right? And with that said, for this segment, this section of the podcast, we will essentially be talking about...
We're going to be handing off the fucking history torch to our big dog, Brian.
Yep.
Sorry for torturing you. But, yeah, I guess that's what's going to be happening. We're talking about turning my visits here into its own podcast, and we still don't even really have an official name for it yet because we were talking about that last time. But I think it's like, yeah, they're echoes of the past or echoing of the past. But like the more I say it out loud, the lamer it sounds. So I don't know. We still got to figure out a good name.
I still like
so,
Bowtie Time Warp, but also people
Bowtie Time Warp.
Drop some fucking shit in the comments. Let us know. What do you think? What's a good name for a fucking show
like
these days?
Some Gene Roddenberry stuff like Now and Again, or I don't know, but we got yeah, we'll figure that out. But for now, here we are. I guess today we're going to talk about the Gilded Age, right?
We're going to talk about the Gilded Age with Dima.
It's your boy Nick.
And
of
Brian.
course,
Let's pop these fucking cans.
Shazam! Wow, that was like as unified as it's ever been.
Right? It's like one sound. That's some damn good beer. It does taste like pancakes.
Oh, man.
It's very pancakes.
I opened the wrong one. I was expecting the Neapolitan, and I got not that. I got Mocha Death.
Is it good, though?
It's Mocha Death.
Mocha Death?
Mocha Terrible.
Teenage Mocha Ninja Turtles.
Right on.
Right.
Gilded Age.
So what in the holy hell is Gilded Age? What the fuck does that mean?
All right.
When was this? Who did it?
Okay. So the Gilded Age is a period of history from 1870 to around 1890. It happens right at the end of the Reconstruction era from the Civil War.
We're talking America.
In America, yeah. And it ends right towards the turn of the 20th century. The reason it's called the Gilded Age is that's actually a quote from Mark Twain, and it was applied later by historians to kind of represent what that period of time was actually like. When you think of gilded, you think of like one of those football trophies you got for...
The first thing that comes to my mind is knights or something, you know?
I think of
I'm thinking Middle Age.
I think of like a guild of like a collective of individuals, and I think of like armament. I think of ornation.
Yeah, like ornation, right? That's a good example. Like, think of like your old like Pee Wee League, baseball trophy, right? You didn't think that little dude on the top of the trophy was actual gold, right? It's just some cheap piece of plastic, but it's gilded with like fake gold. So basically, it's
covered over.
Right. The idea of the Gilded Age is this idea that on the surface everything looks shiny and amazing and this awesome time to be alive, but under the surface, that is very much not true. So the question of what we're talking about today is, well, obviously, let's find out some more details about the Gilded Age, like what it actually was. And then the question is, are we living in a second Gilded Age right now? And arguably, I would say yes, we kind of are. This is, the Gilded Age is a period of history where we saw unprecedented economic growth in America. Infrastructure was being built at an all-time high because, again, it's the end of the Reconstruction era, so there's nowhere to go but up. But we saw some of the wealthiest people on the planet all living right here in America, starting brand new ideas for their technology at the day, literally changing the planet.
And we also got to remember, this is what America's been around, 100 years at this point?
What, by the Gilded Age?
Yeah, by the beginning of the Gilded Age.
Well, we officially declared independence in 1776, so 6 years shy.
Okay.
But yeah, this is right after the Civil War, right after the Reconstruction era.
I understand.
But this is where we have some of the most economic growth. This is where we have the richest people on earth that aren't royalty. We are
your Vanderbilts, your Rockefellers.
That's exactly who I'm talking about. But this is when America starts to build its own royalty, if you will. But another thing that's happening.
Sorry for cutting you off, Brian, which is ironic because we're coming from that.
Right, we're trying to leave that, but it kind of makes you think maybe we don't want that after all. But a part of that is on the other side of the coin, we also saw some of the highest rates of immigration to ever come on American soil during this period because everyone sees that, you come out here and the streets are paved in gold and you can find a job where you mean to tell me my family could eat 3 times a day? I have a place to stay. All these drummed up stories about how awesome America is. And then you
got a boatload of foreign nationals saying, "Hell yeah, brother."
Right. But the problem is they get here and they find out that is very much not the case. They're living in tenement houses. This is when we saw the development of the YMCA and the YWCA just as something to help people that are impoverished. This is back before they were just a gym, obviously. This is when we saw new police tactics. This is where the idea of the third degree comes from because there was such a high amount of crime in the streets. The police are starting to use relatively new technology to create something called the mugshot. The third degree reference to the stuff that the lawyer doesn't need to hear about when he starts effing you up to get answers.
Who does number 2 work
So
for?
we saw a high level of militarism come into the country. We saw an even higher rate of poverty. But on the other side of the coin, we see major innovations that have changed the world in ways that we don't even think about today because they're so commonplace.
Now, there's a lot of things to talk about. I mean, just hearing you talk about it, I want to go back there, you know what I mean? But something that maybe we should talk about. Let's talk a little bit because you being a ex-military, so it's like, let's talk about where the military's at. Let's talk about some of these innovations like the mugshot that you're talking about and these technological really just things coming into play.
Well, as far as the militarism of the nation, that's really not a huge issue. The end of the Reformation era has happened. So the South being divided up into 5 military districts, that's over. The military has left the South. The South is reformed. We've by the 1870s black code had been installed, so this isn't Jim Crow yet, but this is what paves the way for Jim Crow. The South is still very much impoverished just because their entire life prior to the Civil War was all about cotton and textiles.
Yeah.
And now it still is, but we have to figure out a new way to do that where we actually have to pay people for that labor. And that, while that's a good thing, that still is a painful transition period. So as far as the military is concerned, the North and the South are pretty much very tired of the military. They're tired of war. They aren't interested in war. We have a very small army. So militarily speaking, this is not really a military issue. What I'm talking about when we're talking about military, we're seeing more of a police state. This is where we saw the actual police start to ramp up as far as like what their abilities were for nabbing bad guys.
So we're talking about a
police tactics,
but we're also talking about on a bigger scale. We're talking about America start to
become heavily populated,
and become its own country. Right?
Yeah,
we're focusing less on what's going on around us, more so on.
Well, we're becoming a new country.
Right.
We were already a country, and we've ripped ourselves to shreds. But the Reconstruction era, we're a whole new bird now. But the Gilded Age, what makes the Gilded Age so crazy is that we saw new ideas. This is a time when, as far as capitalism went, there's no rules other than kill or be killed. And as a result, some of the most famous people that we know now, the history is told differently because they never actually did all that, or what they did was not as great.
Scale.
Right. Like, for example, Andrew Carnegie, Carnegie, if it had not been for Carnegie, we would not be sitting here right now. prior to Carnegie, steel already existed. However, it was a very hard item to produce, so you could only produce it in small quantities. Therefore, steel was a luxury item. So prior to Carnegie, it would have been very normal for a rich person to be wearing a necklace made out of steel. But a whole different guy by the name of Bessemer comes up with the Bessemer process. Carnegie sees that I can use this on a mass production scale. And to be fair to Carnegie, he dropped every dime he had into this project. He found outside investors, and it could not have happened at the worst time, because another similarity we have with the Gilded Age is during the Gilded Age, we had 2 economic collapses that rivaled the Great Depression. In the past 20 years, we've had 2, 3 now.
Yeah, recessions.
We're seeing major recessions. We're seeing one right now. And Carnegie, to be fair to him, he dropped every dime he had into making this happen, and it paid off. Because of that, by today's wealth, Carnegie is estimated to have been worth somewhere between $300 and $380 billion.
My man's.
Which is almost twice the amount Jeff Bezos is now. But if it weren't for him, there's no skyscrapers. There's none of this. There's no steel. So I mean,
or maybe this, but just not with steel.
Well, it won't work.
Yeah.
But so he is. To be fair, he deserves to go down in history as quite wealthy, but wealthy enough to buy the world. I mean,
problematic.
Yeah, it's very problematic. And again, to be fair to Carnegie, he is one of those pictures that all these immigrants in Europe saw, and they said, wait a minute, he was an Irish immigrant. Holy crap. You're telling me I can come over to America and all I got to have is a little bit of luck and that can happen to me too? Obviously, the story was much bigger than that, because this guy started when he was old enough taking care of his mom. But yeah, I mean, and by the end of Carnegie's life, he realized, being this wealthy at this point, you're just being greedy. And he actually started to feel bad about it. So he started becoming a philanthropist. He sold all of his shareholdings to J.P. Morgan. And Carnegie Steel became U.S. Steel, still a publicly traded company now.
Morgan, the family, right?
Yeah, J.P. Morgan. So, yeah, they bought Carnegie Steel. It became U.S. Steel. It's still publicly traded. But he took his money. For a brief time, he was literally the richest man in the world. And he just became a full-on,
now you have
full-time philanthropist. Carnegie Hall. That's him.
Pittsburgh, right?
I think in Carnegie Hall in New York.
I think it's in New York.
What am I thinking of Carnegie? There's some
Pittsburgh is where Carnegie Steel started.
Okay, yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
But I mean, you look at all these guys. Rockefeller, he didn't invent oil. He didn't discover oil.
Who was responsible for the huge push with trains?
That was Vanderbilt.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the similar.
It's more about transportation. It just so happened to be in trains. But the question that I was trying to address today is, what are the similarities between that point in the past and now?
Okay.
Like, are there any similarities? Are we actually living in a second Gilded Age? So we see the positives. We saw a few little negatives on that side. What are the differences between now and then? And furthermore, it's important to recognize, can we blame our robber barons that we have today? Were Carnegie and Vanderbilt and Morgan, were they robber barons, or were they capitalists of industry? Or captains of industry, I'm sorry. We can make the same arguments for today for Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, George Soros, all these other guys. Are they causing damage to the country? Kind of yes and no. It's not really their fault. They didn't make the rules. They're playing by the rules.
They just got really successful doing it.
But what happens when you get to that level where you're the one that's writing the rules? Or
you're in a position of influence that can write the rules.
That's what I'm saying. Like we just saw, was it last week or a week before last, Congress just had a big trust busting issue with Mark Zuckerberg, and they're forcing him to sell WhatsApp and Instagram. Mm-hmm. Well, that trust busting issue comes from the latter parts of the Gilded Age, the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is after the Gilded Age, I'm fully aware, but the whole purpose of it was to bust up trust. Ironically, you hear about Mark Zuckerberg owning too much social media and controlling too much media influence. But you don't hear crap about the fact that Disney Plus controls Disney Plus, ESPN, Hulu, Fox, ABC, Pixar, Lucasfilms, Marvel. Really?
National
Geographic. And yeah, all of those are just TV shows, but a lot of those air news as well. And you're going to tell me they have no control over anything?
Oh, they're probably going to come for them too.
It sounds like conspiracy theory stuff, but this is what happened during the original Gilded Age. J.P. Morgan literally sat down with Rockefeller and with Carnegie and said, we have to buy the president. That's exactly what they did. And this is after 1900. But they bought McKinley. They bought him for a first round. And then they also made sure that Teddy Roosevelt got the vice presidency because he was stirring up a lot of trouble in New York. And their plan was to put him in the seat of the vice presidency because that's kind of where you send politicians to die normally, because unless the president dies, you're in
no man's land.
Yeah. You break ties in the Senate, which rarely happens. Unfortunately for these robber barons, McKinley gets assassinated in the start of his second term. Roosevelt's president, first words out of his mouth are, all right, men, let's get started. Are we living in something? Is this going to happen similar now? We're already seeing huge wage disparities between the poor class, middle class, and upper class. The middle class is getting thinner and thinner.
The wealth gap.
The wealth gap, right. However, some people are arguing that during the Gilded Age, the wealth gap actually trimmed down. But if you look at it closely, what you'll find out is the middle class trimmed down while the poor class seemed to grow. The rich class didn't do anything. The same thing is happening now.
Karl Marx, the revolution, right? So it's like the Communist Manifesto, right? So it's like...
That's early. That's like 1814.
Yeah, but where I'm going with this is one of the points that he said, in order to start a revolution or in order for a revolution to occur, there has to be essentially deterioration.
Yeah, there has to be unrest.
The middle class, which causes the unrest to happen between the very thin higher class and the very huge.
Yeah, the only thing you have to do to hold on to the society that you have now is convince the middle class that one day they could be the rich class. And that's one thing America has been very successful about. We've convinced people that if you work really hard and you save your money and you do all the right things, then when you die, you can be rich and leave your kids with a bunch of money. Unfortunately, most of us would argue we work hard, but we're not millionaires. Mm-hmm. We're slowly waking up to that reality that that's not what's going to happen. In fact, economists have a term for this called Matthew theory. You might have heard of it as the poor stay poor, the rich get richer. Mm-hmm. Statistically, that is actually factual. You're probably going to die just as poor, if not poorer, than you will die rich. But this exposes itself when you're in the Gilded Age, right? When you're living in a time like we live now. Like it's one thing to not be able to afford the Ferrari. It's another thing to have a TV show that is a hit series in your lifetime based on this premise of, does the chemistry teacher just choose to die from lung cancer, or does it become a meth kingpin? I honestly believe the reason that show did as well as it did was because people watched that and they thought to themselves, like, yeah, I could kind of see that happening. It's kind of, that's a big problem in our country. We literally have to sometimes choose, do we just lay over and die, or do we fight it, possibly die, and then ruin our family's credit in the process? Because the reality of it is, the things that we need, we can't afford. We're not being paid enough. We're being underpaid and overworked. The same thing that happened in the Gilded Age. This is what made those people the robber barons that they were. Carnegie Steel was notorious for cutting pay mid-work week. Like just coming out and telling you, hey, we got to tighten up the numbers, so I know we were going to pay you X dollars an hour. We're going to cut it in half to 50 cents an hour or whatever. What are you going to do? Go work somewhere else? You can't.
I'm about to stab my foreman.
Right. You're not going to do anything. You're going to keep working 14, 15 hours a day, because not only do I, the steel factory owner, own the steel factory, I also own the company store, the only company store in town that you can shop at. You also are in debt to said company store because I don't pay you enough so I can keep you in debt through the company store. The house you live in is owned by me. The school your kids go to is owned by me. And the second I fire you, you've got about 1 day to get out of my house, and you have no money because that last check is going to get consumed from that debt. There's nowhere in town to work. What are you supposed to do? Pack up your stuff and move? With what money?
We're going to unionize.
Well, that's exactly what happened. And it did not come easily. When unions started to unionize, I mean, there are accounts of massive assassinations where the Pinkerton Detective Agency was hired by Carnegie, and they just opened fire on protesters. So it's a bloody transition. But eventually, after all the work, the progressive era moves in, and we saw these changes. That's why we have the 40-hour work week. That's why we have overtime pay, Saturdays and Sundays off, all this other stuff. These are all things that unions fought for years ago. But we're seeing similar things happen again now. We're not learning our lessons. Amazon, there's a big news story about it about 2 weeks ago. Amazon is hiring corporate spies to work inside of Amazon just to rat out other employees that are talking about unionizing.
They're like secret shoppers.
Yeah, they're like secret employees. So whenever you start talking about how you're not getting paid enough or whatever, I go tell the boss, "What you're talking about a union, you're fired." That's it. We're seeing mass, especially from Amazon. That's like the big one. It's one.
That's the biggest one.
It's kind of a problem we have in today's world. Whatever's the biggest, that's what we see the most of.
Right.
So we see a lot out of Amazon, and it's real easy. It's kind of like McDonald's. It's real easy to point the finger at them and go, "Oh yeah, they're the bad guy." No, they're just doing what everybody else does. They just do it a little bit better.
Right. And on a bigger scale.
Yeah, on a bigger scale. Like Walmart, they're the brick and mortar version of Amazon, essentially. They don't pay their employees enough. But recently, a couple of years ago, they jumped up their average pay to starting out at $11 an hour, which sounds really good until you realize that the average worker needs almost $15 an hour just to survive. And it's a catch-22 because a lot of these smaller businesses couldn't stay afloat, especially in small towns, to pay you $15 an hour. They can't afford it.
Right.
So you're double
it's
screwed.
Almost unheard of, right?
Yeah. So we're seeing a lot of those similar things that are happening from the past. They're happening now. We have laws in place that forbid certain union activity. Like here in North Carolina, unions cannot go on strike. Like teachers' unions have no rights at all. So what's the point of even being in the union?
Right.
That's really their only power.
You cut one hand off, basically. Right?
You cut both hands off because I mean, like the teachers' union, for example. Yes, they're allowed to lobby Congress and work as a lobby group, but they cannot order strikes. They cannot order slowdowns or sit-ins or any of that other stuff. So all of the tools they have at their disposal to try to get what they want, we can't use them. So yeah, that would be a good reason why for the past 2 years, teachers have not received a raise. And you can bet your ass that they will continue to blame COVID for why they can't pay teachers anything in North Carolina. And the same thing's happening everywhere else. Walmart, you mention the word union. If it sounds bad enough, they'll just close that store. They're not going to entertain a union at all.
Right.
Oh, man, I should start planting fucking unionized signs all over Walmarts. I hate a goddamn Walmart, and I'll say it 14 times over.
It's not just Walmart, though. Look at the numbers. Like, you can look at Target. Their employees aren't treated very much better. Like, everybody wants to think Target, that's the place to be. No, not really.
It smells better than Target.
Better than Walmart?
It smells better than Target.
Yeah.
Than Walmart.
But, yeah, I mean...
Yeah.
But, like, these Gilded Age guys, like, they developed steel. They interconnected the railroad systems, connected America, literally. They streamlined production of the automobile.
Well, let's talk about now, right? What are these guys doing now?
Nowadays, they've created a whole new universe. Social media. That is a weapon. That is a tool that is more powerful than this earth has ever seen. Or may ever see again.
Online stores,
online banking. Pretty much, in theory, there's no reason you should ever have to leave your house again.
Yep.
And it's all because of these guys. Or is it though? Like, let's look at Facebook. Did Mark Zuckerberg create Facebook? No, he did not. What was it? What were their names? The Winklevoss twins? They're the ones that actually created it. I mean, it was settled out of court for billions of dollars because he stole their idea.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. McDonald's, same deal.
Yeah, McDonald's. Ray Kroc stole it from the actual McDonald's brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another robber baron of industry. I mean, they create food deserts. They don't pay their employees worth a damn. So,
I mean, to me, what it sounds like is now, because everything is on a virtual platform, it's really causing people, which is the most dangerous thing of all, in my opinion, it's causing people not, because of the, I guess, what their point of sale is because it's so, what is it called when something's easier than another thing? It's so...
the ease of access? Or?
Yeah, because of the ease of access, it causes people not to have face-to-face dialogue, right? It causes people to be just comfortable being in their home, order food online, order products online. People don't have the ability to get, especially with COVID now, right?
Yeah. People
don't have the ability to come together and have organic, because we all know there's a difference between having a conversation with someone on FaceTime or on Facebook or on Skype than it is to be in the same room having a constant dialogue with them.
That's true. I don't know. So I've heard a lot of professors, I've heard a lot of smart people make a lot of different arguments pro and con for internet. And this is still such a new thing for the human condition that it's still anybody's guess on how the internet is really going to shape the future. For on one side of the coin, you're seeing echo chambers. So because of that, we're seeing more and more entrenchment in political and religious views. So now if you're a Trump supporter, you're a hardcore Trump supporter, or a Biden supporter or whatever. So you're seeing that because those echo chambers only tell you what they think they want you to hear, not the other side of the coin. But on the other hand, you are hearing some of the other side of the coin just because we all have family members that we disagree with who have friends, and they're all on Facebook. So we do hear some of those things. We're hearing other sides of the coin. We're seeing an all-time high historically in people claiming to be atheist or non-religious, mainly because of the internet.
Well, here's my thing, though, right, is we have much more experience with face-to-face contact as a human species than we do via online communication.
Right.
So my thing is we are still heavily rooted in nature.
Oh, yeah. It's
communication face-to-face.
Yeah, the internet will never be... I mean, this COVID pandemic has shown us the internet will never fully replace real life. I mean, like I said earlier, theoretically, you should never have to leave your house. This is the one time in your life where they actually said, no, you should stay in your house. And we saw how that worked out. So the internet's never going to replace human contact. But the fact that it can is very telling. And this is the new world that we live in now. And this is why I say that this is our period of a new Gilded Age. These are new technologies, new developments, new things that the world has never seen before. And we're just now getting our hands on this new technology and trying to figure out what it really can do. We're seeing it this technology is even more dangerous than what we had before. Old technology helped us build up. This technology is helping us to destroy the old and replace the new. We're seeing all sorts of new things that are changing. Like when I grew up, I'm just be honest, when I grew up, I used to have a little rebel flag on my wall. I'm from the South. I watched Dukes of Hazzard. I never thought one thing about the Confederate flag being racist. That's just a Southern thing. That's what you did.
That should look cool.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, we started seeing this trend pop up about how the Confederate flag is racist. And at first, I'm like, what are you talking about? And the more I looked into it, the more I learned. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess you got a point. And I don't wave for Confederate flags anymore. I learned. I'm not the only one that's learned that.
Yeah, this shit's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it's like, oops.
Well, right, let's take Mississippi, for example, right? Them changing
they changed their state flag. Holy
flag,
crap.
Right? Yeah.
Do you understand how messed up something has to be for Mississippi to jump on board?
Hey, we love all those. We love anyone from Mississippi. It's just the flag thing. That was crazy,
Here's
right?
Here's the thing about the here's the thing about the Deep South. I'm going to be honest. Here's the thing about the Deep South. If you look at the rest of the world, everybody assumes, like people in France, they automatically assume that all Americans are like Southerners.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all Americans think all Southerners are like the Deep South. And then all Southerners understand that the Deep South is really the butt of the joke of Earth, right? We're not like Mississippi and Alabama. No one else in this world besides Southerners seem to get that.
Right.
Like, Mississippi and Alabama are the butt of the joke for Earth at this point, just by transitive property. So, kind of fuck Mississippi a little bit. Like,
a little bit.
Just be honest.
A little bit. But, hey, look, they're changing, right? They took a couple steps, that
it only
changed
took over
flag.
150 years, but sure, yeah.
Hey, listen, we look at human history, and it's taken very long to get to this point. Very, very long.
Yeah, you're right.
So if we look at you being a historian yourself, I mean, we
shout out to Forrest Gump.
Mobile, Alabama. Or Greenbow, Alabama.
Greenbow, Alabama.
But yeah, I mean, these are some of the things I'm talking about as far as the similarities. Is new technology, but another big thing that's happening one of the reasons I'm saying that we live in a new Gilded Age is because of this massive wealth inequality.
Mm.
And
that's something that transcends race, something that transcends
well,
gender.
It's
something
supposed to,
right.
but it doesn't.
But what I'm saying is that we all have a common problem.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, regardless of what our pay is, we all have a common problem. Because, kind of like the shtick, like the point, like the greatest point, right, in this whole thing is no matter how much you get paid, you're still going to be fucking middle class, or you're still going to be lower class, right? So we have that point of relation with
that's the problem. You may not be middle class. You can always make it to the poor class, but the odds of you dying in the rich class are very, very small. Mm-hmm. Even if you win the lottery, you're still like that. That's the kind of wealth inequality I'm talking about here. Right. You win $30-40 million in the lottery, you're still not in the rich class.
Right.
Oh no.
Like, no, you still need to keep your job.
Also, statistically speaking, you're going to lose that money in the first year. Let's be honest.
Well, I mean, even if you're smart and you do the right things with it, you're still not in the rich class. That's not how that works.
I win the lottery. There's only one thing I am going to do. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Wolfgang Jock. I'm going to start a fucking hot dog cart.
There you go.
I would have went with Smite My Enemies, but that'll work. But yeah, I mean,
I got a money plan to make more money plans.
But I mean, that's the kind of wealth inequality we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. The reality of it is people, we're seeing changes now where people in my generation, we did everything that we were supposed to do. We went to school. We did our little time in the military. We went to college. We got the college degree. We were told that if we did all those things, on the other side of that line was a good job where we could make good money and pay for a good house and the
white picket fence,
husband or wife with the white picket fence and 2.5 kids and a little dog and all that
2.5.
Still trying to figure out that half.
You got to cut one of the kids in half, but I don't know. But yeah, the reality of it is we're waking up to the fact that shit ain't happening. Young people are living with their parents at older and older rates now, like into their
30s.
mid 20s, early 30s are still living with mom and dad, and it's not because failure to launch or anything like that. They just can't afford to.
Well, that's something important to mention. I feel like a lot of people really, I mean, the people that I talk to, they feel like absolute dog shit.
Yeah, and think about how that jacks up, a person's mental state to think that I did everything I thought I did everything I was supposed to. I did all the right things. I never got in trouble, But here I am, 26 years old, still living with mommy and daddy. Mm-hmm. What kind of loser am I? And no, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's because you went to college that you're broke now. because we've set up a system to where now even if you do file bankruptcy, you still have to pay those student loans off. Those are not erased by bankruptcy. And you will pay so much of your monthly income towards that student debt that by the time it's done, you may well have just worked at Walmart.
You might have broke even, dog.
You know, you're making money, but not enough to afford to do anything else.
Right.
So you are in your 30s, and if you are living on your own, you have roommates. That's horse shit. By the time you're 30, you should
have your own house and family.
You should be working on a
car,
family.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not your fault.
No.
You know, I mean, unless you're...
I think that's something important to mention.
Yeah, unless you're one of those losers that just never did anything because mommy and daddy took care of everyone.
If you're a basement dweller, that's
different. I'm not talking about those turds. I'm talking about those ones who still work 9 to 5. They have a full-time job, but they can't get out of their mom's basement because, damn it, there's no job to be had.
Yeah.
You got a college degree, and they're willing to hire you as a startup employee. That's garbage. We have a flooded education market right now because we've given away high school diplomas at this point. Do you understand how hard you have to work to not graduate high school now? Like, I actually have students right now that are like, I'm just going to drop out. I'm like, it's actually harder for you to do the paperwork and all the crap you need to drop out of school than it would be for you to just unscrew yourself and just do the basic crap you need to do to become a high school graduate.
Was that GED, right?
No, high school diploma.
What is GED? Is that 2 years?
General education diploma. No, it's just a matter of how much school you have left to do.
Okay.
You can test out of it. Like, do you understand? I'm being dead serious. Do you understand how easy it is to get a high school diploma now? So we still have this little graduation ceremony, like for my cousin, and we're like, oh, congratulations. No, you passed because
you showed up.
Yeah, like this last year, we passed a mandate. If you were in school when COVID hit, you have 2 choices to make sure you pass. You can either take the grade you had before school closed, and if it was passing, cool. We're just going to pretend the rest of that year didn't happen and you passed. If you were failing, we'll pass you anyway and call it COVID withdrawal.
We had a 4-month snow day.
Yeah, essentially. Yeah.
In the middle of spring.
So any idiot can get a high school diploma these days. And then on top of that, we're also flooding the system with bullcrap diplomas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's not to say diplomas are irrelevant, but at the same time, what good is your associate's degree? You know who else has one? Everyone else. You know, no one's hiring.
Even bachelors, I mean.
Well, yeah, even the same thing with bachelor's and master's degrees. It's like my degree is a bachelor's of science in historical studies and a minor in education. You know who else has that? The science teacher.
At the high school.
Yeah. Like, companies and businesses are not using your degree as a focal point. It's like, oh, you have a history degree? Maybe you would be good as a history curator. No, they just want to see, oh, did you graduate? Cool. That means you're not going to quit in 2 weeks.
That's just like a check on the box.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah.
But that little check on the box cost you 25, 30 G's that you got to pay back plus
which is already money that you didn't have to begin with. So you're automatically, and this is a point of relation.
You're starting out in debt.
Point of relation to the original Gilded Age is that same
railroad
worker.
Yeah.
Right?
That
was working for what was the name? Not Carnegie. Vanderbilt, right?
Well,
it's like if
probably.
I quit, right?
Yeah.
He owns this, he owns that.
He owns
if I
you.
quit, I cannot quit. Right?
Yeah, he owns you. And then what makes it even worse is, let's say your wife and your kids, you know, they're at home doing whatever they're doing. You get killed in an accident, you know, in the coal mines or wherever. Okay, well, now your wife and kids owe that debt, and it will be paid because there's no such thing as life insurance. There's no such thing as any of that stuff. You're screwed. So your wife is going to be the one in the coal mine. We have recorded instances where women
That's
are
insane.
We have recorded instances where women are working in the coal mines right next to men, butt naked. And the reason they're naked is because it is so hot in that coal mine, they can't wear clothes or they'll die. And it's not like these are recorded writings where somebody was like, oh, look at that naked. No, they didn't even bat an eye because they understood they were naked too. You are literally working in conditions that are so deplorable, you can't even wear clothes. And the only reason she's working there is because you died in a cave-in trying to help that guy make his empire. And if she doesn't pay, then your kids will go to the sweatshop. It's something else to remember. During the Gilded Age, it was perfectly normal to put your 10-year-old in the factory. And they would literally chain them to the machine to make sure they couldn't leave.
Child labor laws.
There were no child labor laws back then. That's a union thing.
Listen, so this relates all back to what we're dealing with now. And we can relate this naked kind of feeling, right, to the kids that graduate college that are living in their mom and dad's basement, that pretty much everything they did
stuck
was
with their mom and dad's bullshit that mom and dad had no choice but to make in the first place just to keep your sorry ass alive, and now you're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
So you're naked in the coal mine. Working.
You're screwed from the start, and you'll die screwed.
No.
That's a Nelson line if I ever heard one, robbing Peter to pay Paul.
That's not mine. That's older than time, dude. Like
no, I've heard
I remember my grandma saying that to me.
I've heard it from your mom, so that's
But and obviously today is much different. We have a lot of those Gilded Age laws that are still in place today. But there are similarities too. Like, for example, we have minimum wage laws now. It is illegal for an employer to just cut your wages mid-employment without your consent.
Cut that pay, I'm cutting you.
Yeah. Like, he can't just come along and say, oh, I'm cutting your pay. No, hell you ain't. He cannot do that, or she cannot do that. You have 40-hour works weeks.
And that's something different.
She cannot do that. That is another big difference. There's, a lot more equality amongst the sexes. Right. Because, you're right. That's not a big thing you heard of during the Gilded Age is super rich women. Right. Well, you did have rich women, but they were usually the wives of
these robber barons.
Yeah, these robber barons. But nowadays, I mean, these robber barons that we have today, they have more workers' right laws that they have to honor, but they are continuously trying to usurp those laws.
So, ultimate question.
Yeah.
Right? For me.
Ultimate.
Is...
I'm out of beer.
Inflation involved.
Back there.
Oh, is there another beer?
Yeah.
I got it.
Right there.
Sweet.
Inflation involved. Go ahead and crack that before we even.
I'm sorry,
No worries. No.
Do I need to peel the label or whatnot?
Nope.
Yeah, the hell with it at this point.
Oh.
Ziggy zaggy.
I'm good. We're at. That's pretty good. I'm everywhere now.
You need.
Thanks, man.
Nick, reach into that.
I'm sorry, I'm an asshole.
No, the one to the right of that. Yeah.
I suck.
Get the wet wipes.
My bad. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Did that in that one.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'll get it in a minute.
So, ultimate
Show must go on.
Yeah, ultimate question. Sorry,
is
it's okay if it's OB or 30.
Is inflation included? Does the higher class?
This is actually
even higher. Is the higher class even higher than it was, and is the situation even worse than it was?
This is actually a really hard question to answer because actually before I come here and do this, I actually kind of go through some things I've studied before and just kind of because I want to come in here blindsided because I don't remember everything, but. That's actually one of the things I looked up. It's very hard to compare actual wealth from the 1870s to now because so many things are different. For example, back then we had a gold standard. Then we added silver. Now we have no metal to back it.
It's all promissory.
It's all promissory notes.
Another
thing is there was no income tax back then either. So adjusting for inflationary rates and income. I mean, we can adjust for immediate inflation, but as far as like what your actual take-home wealth is going to be, it's hard to say. Like just for example, I looked up how much Carnegie was actually worth. I saw somewhere between 380 million, 420 million.
I saw 420.
Yeah, it's not as easy to answer as all that because the money back then is not the money today. I've actually saw sources that said that the wage gap was closing. I saw a bunch more said no, it ain't, but it actually got worse. So, as far as like what the actual wealth is today, as far as the middle class and poor class, I feel like it's fairly safe to sure we're doing a lot better than we were back then. We're not living in tenement houses. While we may not have physical cash in our hand, as a result of the New Deal, which is more government funding, we have easy access to roads. Regular middle class and even poor class people have cars. They have ready access to food. This is the first time in human history where a nation has to worry about its poor people being too fat. Yeah, but I get it. Shut up. But anyway, suck it in. But anyway, but yeah. So I mean, life is a lot better for us now than it was back then. But at the same time, we are seeing a much higher concentration of wealth than we did during the Gilded Age. The top 1% of earners in America are worth almost half of all of the rest of the nation's wealth combined.
That's insane.
Whereas prior to the Gilded Age, that was about 30%. So it's a hard question to answer. This is one of those debatable topics. Are we actually in a second Gilded Age? I will say this, if we are living in a second Gilded Age, this one's definitely doing a lot better than the first one. So
there you go, folks.
You don't necessarily have to worry about getting kicked out of your house just because you got fired from McDonald's.
Or killed in a coal mine.
Or killed in a coal mine, or shot by the Pinkerton detective agencies because you didn't go back to work. Have your boss yell at you in midweek saying, we're cutting your wages in half. So, but another thing to remember at the same time is that happened because there was no law in place that kept it from happening.
Right.
The power of the people, the power to unionize, the power to fight, and the willingness to bleed for it is what gave us what we have now. It's easy to sit there and go, oh, it's war, it's the money. No, it's the power of people not backing down from pricks for years. That's what gave it to us now. This is the first time in history when people started to realize that freedom is not based on freedom from government, but freedom is defined as inclusion in the government. Right? So we need to hold on to that as we look into the 1%ers now and all this. That's
where I was going to take it is I think that's a great place to kind of wrap this up is we need to keep that ideology. We need to keep that point in mind.
Yeah.
And say, if we unite as a people, right?
What
did the Constitution say? We the people, right?
Yeah.
So
here's the thing. This is a little off topic, but I think we can all agree that 2020 sucked ass. Which, by the way, Happy New Year.
Except for Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, it was a pretty sweet time for Jeff. Yeah. But here's the thing: if you really stop and you really look at everything that happened in 2020. We learned a lot, right? One of the things we learned that's kind of specific to this topic is I remember when I got hired where I work, I was told that I was considered a non-essential employee, meaning that if shit hit the fan, I'm not supposed to be at work, right? I'm a teacher. I'm not a security guard. I've told you I work with detention, right? All of a sudden, COVID hits. All of a sudden, I become essential. That was weird. Then I'm not essential again. Then I'm actually what we call mandatory. Then I'm not mandatory. Then I'm become mandatory variable. I'm still not sure what that means, right? But that didn't just that wasn't exclusive to me, right? They shut down everything, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, the Walmart Corporation, Dollar General Corporation, McDonald's, all these companies, all of a sudden said, "Well, we're essential. We're essential because." Our employees are essential because, and all those employees got back to work. Now, if all of those same employees suddenly started to demand that, hey, you said we were essential before, it's time you start paying us as if we're essential. I wonder how essential they would be then. That's my real question. We're living in a time of drastic change, and watching the past and relating it to now is probably 2020 was the best year to do that. Like, now is the time to stick your head out of the foxhole and tell your boss. It's like, hey, you said I was essential a minute ago. It's time to start ponying up.
Come out, take a shot.
Because I promise you, that's what's going to happen in the next couple of years. Your boss is going to deny you raises and benefits and things. They're going to try to cut average wages because we have to recover from coronavirus. Horse shit. They have to recover their stocks. About 10% of Americans actually play with stocks.
Mm.
So about 90% of Americans are not affected by the stock market. This was the same way in the Great Depression. They need to recover their profit margin.
Right.
That's their problem, not yours. Don't let it become yours.
It's not your
Fuck
company.
them. Fuck them, he said drunkenly. But yeah,
yes.
I'm kind of hoping history does repeat itself because the Gilded Age ended on a very positive note for us, the middle class and poor class. And we've maintained a lot of those benefits that we gained. We lost a few, but we gained most of them. And if we hold on to what we have, realize what we did to get there, stand up, fight, be willing to bleed and die for it, it's only going to get better.
Right.
So the choice at this point is really up to us.
We got to pony up.
Yeah. It's like either put up or shut up. If you're really upset that Jeff Bezos is worth $186 billion, stop buying Amazon. That'd be a good start. A little bit is your fault. Mine too. I shop at Amazon. I get it.
I stopped.
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't pay for it.
Because you're poor, Nick. So.
Jeff, you want to fight?
That's what Nick's been saying for the last couple months is,
I'm not talking trash about my rich uncle Jeff Bezos. I just want him to know I love him very much and I miss him and I wish he would call.
Fight? Question mark?
Well, listen, Nick has been trying to fight all these guys. He's like, his ideology is this.
It's because he's an alcoholic.
If they won't fight me, I'm better than them.
Exactly. That's his thing. It's
right.
like, hey, you gotta, duh. All right? Let's fight. Let's fight. All right? If I beat you...
I get to go through your freezer and eat all your fucking chicken fingers.
Yes.
That seems fair.
Metaphorical.
Why would I have metaphorical
and
chicken
literal?
I just want the real ones. No damn fucking meta food.
I'm trying to make a language arts assignment out of this. Just give me some damn chicken nuggets.
All right, so let's end this bad boy on a positive note. Let's wrap it up.
Well, wrapping it up, you kind of wrapped it up right there. We gotta listen. We gotta unite. We gotta, as a people, we have to literally see and communicate with one another. Okay, well, this is not working out for us, and we barely can something that this pandemic has made me realize, and that so many numerous articles that I've read, is a lot of people are literally living paycheck to paycheck. I think it's over 80% in America.
Oh yeah, you're screwed.
So it's like, if there was a better time in history, this is the time. Right?
Yeah, now's the time to strike.
Yeah,
they've proven that they need you just as bad as you need them. Mm-hmm. So now it's
no
time
matter
to
how
come
much
to the
money
bargain.
they have, they need people to work those jobs.
Yeah, none of those companies are going to function without you.
Yeah.
So what they're banking on is for you and all the others like you to not be aware of that and not come together.
Just imagine fucking Jeff Bezos just like doing the deliveries himself, like coming up to your front door. Hey man, I got this.
Fuck that bald-headed Lex Luthor turd on.
What happened to Uncle Jeff?
He said I couldn't have any money, so fuck him.
He cut me out of the wheel.
Well, listen, man, let's wrap this thing up, man. It's been a really great episode. I feel like we got definitely covered a lot of what we wanted to cover.
A lot of hardcore factoids, and we had a little fun with it.
Yeah, man. Well, that's the whole point of history, is like learning from it. So, like, my big three are, Lord loves a working man. Don't trust white people. There's a whole lot out there. If you catch it, see a doctor and get rid of it. But yeah, I mean, don't trust white people. Don't do that. But yeah, the end.
Except for us. No, don't do that. Don't do that. We've always preached that from the first episode of this kind of segment is, something that this podcast has preached is never, ever, ever 100% agree with or like literally absorb everything we're saying. Go out there and do the research yourself.
Critical thinking.
Exactly. Critical
thinking.
But
if I'm wrong, don't call me on it and make me feel stupid. Like, I mean, you probably will anyway because, trolls, but either way,
drop them comments.
I will feel bad about it.
Drop them comments.
Well, listen, just to reiterate.
No, hey, if I'm wrong, let me know I'm wrong. That's always, I'm always wanting to learn more, and hard money says at some point I screwed something up. So there you go.
and just to reiterate, this has been the 4099 podcast, but this segment is going to be eventually turned into its own.
You could look at the camera, ding dong.
Its own thing, right? And so we will be working on that very hardly.
Quote unquote hard.
Yeah, hard.
It's coming.
It's coming.
It's hard and it's coming.
But we really need a decent idea to name this new podcast, though.
Yeah.
So whatever comments we can get, like,
throw them down there.
Yeah, let us know, because we got nothing. We've been working on this for 2 months now.
Yeah. Throw them down there. Let us know how you feel.
Hell. I'll put this one out there. Somebody drops a fire comment with a solid name that we go with. We actually use it. I got a goodie bag for you.
There you go. That's an incentive.
I will not be including in that goodie bag because I'm a cheap piece of shit.
And
I might steal something from his house and mail it to you.
Oh yeah, you know where I live. Crap.
and yeah, so it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Brian, thank you.
Thank you.
Nick, thank you.
Shut up.
Dima, thank you. And yeah, we are out.
We out.